Hello, yes, a good morning, a good afternoon, or a good evening to you, however you may be listening and wherever you may be listening. This is the latest edition of the Baldwin Sports Media NFL podcast. Coming to you on a week where I'm sad to say we do have to start off on a bit of a somber tone. You know that I like to keep these things, upbeat and positive and try to have a little bit of fun with it, but I can't really do that this week because of the news that emerged over the past couple of days surrounding Minnesota Vikings rookie cornerback Khyree Jackson, who tragically lost his life in a vehicle accident in Maryland. And photos have emerged of the situation, and it is just a simply tragic matter for rookie fourth round player, was all Pac-12 at Oregon, so he certainly could play a bit, certainly had or seemed like he had a bright future in the league, and now to have that just taken away from him like this, it is a very tragic moment for the Minnesota Vikings and the NFL as a whole, because it does sound like they have, seem like they have lost a very talented player, and obviously that is, not the main situation right now, because there is a family that has lost someone. There is some they've lost a family member, and again, his football career is secondary to the fact that he has tragically lost his life in this accident. Again, photos have emerged of the situation, and it's just absolutely heartbreaking to see someone's life and someone's career, over before it has even begun. And so there is, as I say, no real easy way to sort of carry on with this podcast, but I do think it is fair that we sort of collectively, for those of you who are listening, just take a brief moment of silence and reflection for the loss of a young life. I thank you for joining me in that. And as I said, there's no real easy way to move on, but we do have to move on. We do have to move on with the rest of the show. And if you don't feel comfortable listening to the rest, I would completely understand. I do thank you for joining us for the introductory bit. But if you do want to carry on and, maybe take your mind off it with some other football chat, then you're more than welcome to do that as well. So again, it's hard to move on when you open up a show with a topic like that. But I am gonna try and move on and talk about the rest of the news around the NFL. Again, the Khyree Jackson situation dominated the vast majority of the NFL news headlines this weekend, but there were some other things, and I am going to talk about that. But as I said, if you don't feel comfortable listening in, then I do not blame you. But with that being said, I do want to thank you for those of you who have decided to stick around. As I said at the start of the show every week, if you are new, then thank you very much for joining us. You are welcome to like and subscribe on whatever platform it is that you are listening to. We are also on various social medias. We are on Twitter at MLB Sports Media, and we are on YouTube, TikTok, and Instagram. All of them are at Baldwin Sports Media. And for those of you who are regular listeners, then as always, I thank you once again for joining us and making us a part of your week. And so with that, we move on with the rest of the show. And a bit of news that I saw that really fascinated me was that Matt Eberflus has been installed by some as the favourite for the Coach of the Year. Now, I saw this from, again, it was from one report and from one odds maker, this being DraftKings, who have made him their favourite to be Coach of the Year. And this sort of goes on from what we were talking about a couple of weeks ago about the award situation when it comes to the NFL and what really should constitute being in the running. Because, we talked about it in relation to the Comeback Player of the Year award. And, should it really be someone who's coming back from injury, or is it, a circumstantial thing, or a lack of playing time, or, bad performance? And I think we sort of need to adjust what sort of comes when it comes to the Coach of the Year as well, because I think a lot of people are going to be caught up in voting for Matt Eberflus to be Coach of the Year for, if he manages to turn the Chicago Bears around in their first season, in much the same way that Dan Campbell managed to turn around the Detroit Lions, or D'Amico Ryans managed to turn around the Houston Texans, where those were effective. They were pretty big leaps in terms of where they started from to where they come up from. But if you look at where the Chicago Bears were last season, they were 7-10. So it's not as if Matt Eberflus is trying to turn around a team that was 0-16. They were in a couple of games. They were a fairly, in some occasions, a fairly competitive, team. I'm just looking at their schedule now. They lost to the Green Bay Packers in the final week of the season. A good Green Bay Packers team that made the playoffs. They lost to them by 8 points. That's one score. Cleveland Browns, who made the playoffs, they beat them. Lost to them rather by only 3 points. That's a pretty good score. Lost to the Detroit Lions by 5 points. So 7 wins, and they were good in a couple of those games. So this is with all the the problems with Justin Fields and whatever, and did he really have enough weapons to work with, and all that sort of stuff. So the Chicago Bears are in a good spot, and again, this comes back to what the argument about comeback player of the year. Is that really worth the baseline, as we are the starting point for where we consider a coach of the year candidate to be? I don't really think so. And also, when you consider the additions that have been made, predominantly in the key position of quarterback with Caleb Williams, if Caleb Williams goes on this tear that many people think he is possible of, and wins Rookie of the Year and absolutely lights it up, is it necessarily going to be down to Matt Eberflus that he did it? If Caleb Williams turns a couple of those losses into wins and they go, for the sake of argument, 10-7, say, and it's all off the back of Caleb Williams with his arm and with his legs and putting on an incredible rookie season, the way that we saw, Robert Griffin III do, for instance. Is it really going to be down to Matt Eberflus, or is it going to be down to the fact that they lucked into the position of the number 1 draft pick because they didn't earn it? The Carolina Panthers gave it to them. And then, they just got lucky with a generational quarterback. That's not a Matt Eberflus thing. That's maybe an offensive coordinator, or just Caleb Williams is, incredible, just natural talent. So does that naturally, are people going to look at that and say, oh no, Matt Eberflus did a great job in coaching him? So that's why I think Coach of the Year, at least when it comes to Matt Eberflus, I think that is one of those things, just take a step back on what are we actually setting the criteria as when it comes to giving out these awards, because we don't want to be jumping the gun or giving it to someone who isn't necessarily totally deserving of it. Like you could make the argument Joe Flacco was not deserving of Comeback Player of the Year award when it should have gone to Damar Hamlin, say, for instance. When I look at potential Coach of the Year candidates, I look at Jim Harbaugh, and if he's able to, maybe perhaps unseat the Kansas City Chiefs as the number 1 team in the AFC West, I think that would be a better baseline and more of a consideration to be Coach of the Year than it would Matt Eberflus turning around the Chicago Bears. I look at Antonio Pierce, if he's able to take a not totally great Las Vegas Raiders team and turn them maybe into playoff contenders, I think that would probably be a better situation. I look at Sean Payton, if he's able to finally turn around and have an impact with the Denver Broncos. I think that would be a good, again, going back to the AFC West. I'm just off the top of my head, these are all AFC West teams. If any of them really are able to unseat the Kansas City Chiefs, I think that would be a better candidacy for Coach of the Year than Matt Eberflus would be with the Chicago Bears. Rather, I also look at Brian Callahan with the Tennessee Titans, who, after losing the likes of Derrick Henry in this offseason, a pretty big, important offensive weapon for them, are they able to turn things around and be playoff contenders? I think that would be a better baseline. I look at Dan Quinn with the Washington Commanders, with the team that they have had put together and that they are working with. Are they able to turn things around with Jaden Daniels as a rookie quarterback? I think that would be more impressive than what Matt Eberflus could pick up. So, again, like the awards that we talked about the other week, let's just, before we go voting and before we start wondering who is going to be the favourite, let's just take back and assess exactly what we are looking for when it comes to these awards before we start to work out who is going to be, who is going to be the favourite. Otherwise, we just find ourselves going down this line of people who are winning these awards, but they don't necessarily deserve them at the end of the day. And with that, we move on to our second topic, and this one concerns San Francisco 49ers wide receiver Brandon Aiyuk, who, I don't know about you, but seems to be the most talked about player when it comes to a potential trade this off-season. Now, there have been some players who have been traded. There have been free agent moves or whatever. But the one big one that seems to be unresolved is Brandon Aiyuk. Again, if you want to make the argument for Deebo Samuel, fine. But I think that has sort of quietened down a bit. The big one now is Brandon Aiyuk, his fellow 49ers wide receiver. And some interesting developments coming out over the course of the weekend. Now, just to set the scene, he is going to be playing this year on his 5th-year option. So, in the last year of his contract, and proved this past year that he is going to be a very important, or can be at least, a very important part of the San Francisco 49ers offense, because he put up 75 catches, had a career 1,375 yards, and 7 touchdowns, which put him at the second-team All-Pro level. So, he's certainly working off a pretty good baseline when it comes to his performance levels, which might be why there has been something of a standoff between the two sides this offseason as he looks to get the contract that he feels he deserves. And, there has been some problems. He's held out of some of the off-season activities for the 49ers and has unfollowed them on a bunch of social media. The latter one, not really that important, but some people in the media like to play it up to be, so I just thought I'd mention it. This is all amid the contract dispute, and there has been some sort of hints that he doesn't want to be there. Reports or images emerging over the weekend that he was, looking at the Washington Commanders training footage, which might perhaps signal that, he's getting a head start on, the Washington Commanders system and wanting to play there. He's also been, there's been footage emerging of him telling Jaden Daniels, the quarterback for the Commanders, that they don't want me back, I swear. So that plays into it. A lot of talk and a lot of reports because of the way the current wide receiver room is set up, that the Pittsburgh Steelers are likely to make a move or could make a move for him. And he was seen wearing a Pittsburgh Pirates hat, which some people think is an indication that he might be going there. So there are indications that he is not going to be with the 49ers when the season starts. Again, how true that eventually becomes, we'll have to wait and see. But it is leaning more likely in my eyes that he leaves the 49ers, just because it's some of these things I just don't think you can come back from. So now the question really turns to the 49ers. What are they going to do? Are they going to try to appease him and say, you are an important part of this offense. We want to keep you. Sorry for holding out for so long. Here's whatever much they agree to. Or do they try to trade him away? And the thing is, they have got a bit of a fine balance here, because yes, they probably might want to look to get rid of him. And so they want to hold on to him because as teams go further into training camp and minicamp, maybe there are injuries, so a team will get desperate and will want to just pay whatever the 49ers want in terms of trade compensation to go get him. Or maybe, it comes towards the start of the regular season. Things haven't quite worked out in a wide receiver room, and they think, again, we'll just pay what the 49ers want. Or do they perhaps go the other way and cash in on him now? Because who knows what's going to happen to the 49ers. If you have this asset that you don't think is going to be, or the 49ers may not think is going to be with them for too much longer, would they rather have that, that trade value back, that, for the sake of the argument, a 2 and a 4, say, back in exchange for Brandon Aiyuk, get that back so that if one of their other wide receivers or one of their other weapons goes down, or even someone on the other side of the ball picks up an injury and they can't do anything, then they might say, we've got to go out and get someone, and we can use what we've got from Brandon Aiyuk to go and get it. So the 49ers are in a bit of a tricky situation now. If I was them, I would personally lean towards the latter. I just think get what you can right now, and then just hope for the best. Again, if no injuries come about on your side, then you've got those picks that you can, weave into your plans for next year's draft. And you can rebuild if you won the Super Bowl, which I think there's every chance they do. Then you can reload and go for that. Or if they fall short and they need to reload again, then they've got another couple of pieces to work with on that end. So I just think by running it this late, running it late, I think you are just running the risk of there being no one there to work with at the end of the day. So just take what you can now and just reassess. And just, again, I hope it doesn't come to anything, but keep that in your back pocket just in case it does. And so with that, we move on to our final topic. A bit of a shorter show this week for the obvious reason that I covered at the start of the show. It sort of dominated a lot of the new headlines, so that's why the show is a bit shorter this week, as there was not a lot of other major news to really talk about. But I do want to finish on something of a fun story, and it does go back to the world of Major League Baseball, which I've dabbled in a couple of times previously on the show, and this really is a bit of a big moment for the city of Pittsburgh, but I think for all of Major League Baseball, if I'm being honest, and it does concern Paul Skenes and the fact that he has gone to this year's All-Star game. Now, for those of you outside the city of Pittsburgh, you may know him more as Olivia Dunn's boyfriend. Similar to, I'm sure there are a bunch of people who, depending on which world you live in, only know Travis Kelce as Taylor Swift's boyfriend, but if you're a sports person, then it's sort of the other way around. And again, in Pittsburgh, it's starting to become Paul Skenes is becoming the bigger name, and even one of the biggest names in sport in the whole city. Just the fever surrounding him has been phenomenal, and the fact that he's been named to the All-Star game this early in his career, after only 10 starts, is just fantastic. And I do think that it is something. I think he is a player that can really help baseball get out of the slump, as it were. Major League Baseball have done some good things over the past few years, like the introduction of the pitch clock in order to speed up the game, in order to get a younger crowd, because of the average age of a baseball fan. It's not sustainable as counting guys. But I genuinely think Paul Skenes being marketed as the face of the league, or one of the faces of the league, would be a great way to help rejuvenate the sport. Again, the Livy Dunn factor, having them as the celebrity power couple, will not hurt as well. But just Paul Skenes pitching at 100 miles an hour on a regular basis, a lot of charisma. The mustache itself is marketable pretty much on its own, given the way the quirky way the world works. So I just think this guy, if you are not a baseball fan, just tune into the All-Star game, because there is a genuine chance that you are going to be amazed by what you see with him. And there's even talk that he would start the All-Star game, which would be a moment of history in and of itself. And the fact that he could be going up against the likes of perhaps Aaron Judge, who is the predominant home run hitter in baseball right now, a New York Yankee rather, and the storylines that could come out of that. I genuinely think that this is going to be a pivotal moment in baseball history, and something that the league cannot afford to mess up. So again, great moment for Paul Skenes, a great moment for the city of Pittsburgh to have someone like that, as I say, a potential new face of the league go into the All-Star game. And again, Major League Baseball better not screw this up, because they have a really big moment on their hands that could be, as I say, could be pivotal for the future of the league and indeed the sport. And with that, our show comes to an end. I want to thank you very much for listening. And as I said at the start of the show, if you are new, thank you very much for coming and joining us. Don't forget to like and subscribe on the platform that you are on. And don't forget to follow us on our other social media platforms. They are at Baldwin Sports Media. That's on YouTube, on TikTok, and on Instagram. And on Twitter, we are at MRB Sports Media. And for those of you who are regulars, once again, thank you very much for joining and making us a part of your week. We shall be back next week, where hopefully there will be a lot more news to talk about, and hopefully none as tragic as the news that we discussed at the top of the show. But yeah, until next week, you guys all take care. And as I always like to say, especially in light of the news that we had this week, stay safe.